best available technology next year, I believe. If you could clarify that statement. And secondly, it's my understanding under the tailoring rule that the EPA does not exempt or preempt state action, and many states have 100 to 250 ton limits under the PSD and Title V provisions. Will that mean that those states then can or must regulate at that threshold?
Now, your question is a legal one, so I will not attempt to do the whole analysis here. What I will say about state action is that state action has been critical to getting us where we are so far. We've worked closely with states, and states are a key player as the legislative discussion continues. My point earlier was in making sure that the American people understand that we here at EPA believe that there are ways to sensibly move forward on regulation. So far, what we've done is primarily deregulatory. It's given assurances to small businesses and medium businesses that they would not be regulated, while giving a clear signal to larger emitters who burn over 131 rail cars a year of coal, for example, that regulations can come under the Clean Air Act.
Mr. Jackson, several congressional Republicans had asked that you delay today's announcement pending the investigation of the hacked emails controversy. Why didn't you delay it, and on what scientific basis have you moved ahead?
I didn't delay it because there is nothing in the hacked emails that undermines the science upon which this decision is based. When you see the decision, and I hope you will review it, you'll see that the responses to comments include responses to questions about the underlying science, which are being raised again with respect to this particular issue. But this issue has not raised new scientific questions which aren't addressed already in this finding.
So can you give us a couple bullet points of the science itself to kind of bolster your argument?
Well, you know, I think the thing to talk about is the amount of science that's out there. United States scientists, many organizations even represented in this room, have been studying this data for years. It's also important to understand, to contextualize those emails a little bit. You know, that's one thread of looking at one data set over many, many data sets and literally thousands of different threads of analyses, all of which reach the consensus that climate change is happening, that it's caused by man-made emissions. And then we look at that and look at the droughts, the flooding, the changes in diseases, the changes in migratory habits, the changes in our water cycle and climate that we now find affect human health and welfare.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Administrator Jackson, you said that next spring large emitting facilities will be required to incorporate the best available control technologies. Is that under the Clean Air Act, or are you going to propose a new rule?
EPA has already proposed a rule that says that large facilities, those that emit over 25,000 tons per year, would be subject to the BACT requirements under the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act sets out a simple premise, which is once you know you have pollution and once you know it's endangering human health and welfare, then EPA must act, and it must compel facilities to use the best technologies out there. Now, it was pretty smart of people to realize that technology evolves over time, and my belief is that anything done in the future under the Clean Air Act, and we have not proposed what those technologies will look like, has to be done with an eye towards what's happening in Congress, but more importantly, the development of technology. We simply cannot make people implement a technology that does not yet exist under regulation. Yeah, the work that has to be done is that EPA would have to put out technical guidance to tell a facility what that would mean, and then work with states, back to Ian's question, to implement those requirements.
Administrator, you talked earlier, do you still believe that legislative solution is better than this? And if so, explain that.
I absolutely do. I stand firm in my belief that legislation is the best way to move our economy forward on clean energy and to address climate pollution. The reason is because legislation is comprehensive. It can be economy-wide. It can move us it can transition us, as the President has said, and it can give business absolute certainty that we are on the road to clean energy, that the investments that they want to make, either in retrofits or in technology development and demonstration and deployment, will be profitable ones because they know that this country is on the road. That being said, I do not believe this is an either-or proposition. I actually see this as a both and. I believe the Clean Air Act can complement legislative efforts, and in fact, the Clean Car Rules that we propose is an excellent example of that.
Hi, Robin Bravender with Greenwire. Several environmental groups have petitioned EPA to set national ambient air quality standards for carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. I wonder what your plans are with that petition and whether the endangerment finding now requires you to set an axe for carbon dioxide.
No, nothing in today's action requires any regulatory action. That's an important distinction. Thanks, Robin. And we will certainly review the petition and respond appropriately. I have never believed, and this agency has never believed, that setting a national ambient air quality standard for greenhouse gases was advisable. That being said, we need to look at the petition. I don't know that there's anything in there that would change my view, but we'll certainly do that.
Will this action today serve as the basis for regulatory action beyond the car light truck rule and the tailoring?
Well, today's action, again, is the basis for the CARS rule. You have to find endangerment in order to then be compelled, and it's not a choice, to act under the Clean Air Act. Further actions would certainly be warranted when we talk about a threat to public health and welfare. So EPA continues its work on the regulatory front, and I want to emphasize again, I believe it's not either or. I don't want anyone to leave here thinking that because we continue our work, I don't stand firm in my belief that we need legislation. That being said, I also believe quite firmly that there are things that the Clean Air Act allow us to do, clean cars, emissions reporting, that we've already done, that pave the way for this country to move smartly, sensibly, with common sense towards a clean energy future.
Is it your intent that this endangerment finding will push members of Congress who are right now on the fence to get onto your side and to work for a climate and energy bill?
No. My intention here is to follow up on an almost 3-year-old requirement from the United States Supreme Court that EPA address climate pollution, that it address greenhouse gases, that the Clean Air Act does in fact allow us to do so. And as you know, this draft endangerment finding has been worked on for years, predating the Obama administration. The other part of my attention, to be quite frank, is to release the science that so many EPA employees worked on so diligently, and I think so effectively, to reduce the questions in many people's minds to an answer about public health and welfare. This year, 2009, the United States government is saying once and for all that we are in the clean energy and climate arena, that with respect to climate pollution, we will act.